Okay, welcome to this week's edition of Military Trailblazer Office Hours. Thank you for taking time out of your Wednesday evening to spend it here in the spirit of community, mentorship, and learning. I'm your host, Geraldine Hall. I'm a customer success manager at Salesforce and a military trailblazer. Each week, we invite a co-host, or in this case, co-hosts, to take part in the conversation so that we can leverage their experience, expertise, and unique perspectives. Tonight's session is the first in our two-part AI series, Chat GPT for accelerating Salesforce development. So if you're interested in learning ways to leverage AI in your Salesforce development, this is the session for you. All right. So today I have the privilege of introducing our four co-hosts who in December of 2023 collectively co-authored and published the book entitled Chat GPT for Accelerating Salesforce Development. This groundbreaking book delves into the seamless integration of AI into Salesforce development workflows, offering invaluable insights and practical applications. Through their combined expertise, their book details innovative ways to leverage AI, particularly Chat GPT, to revolutionize traditional Salesforce development processes, from design to testing. So without further ado, I would like to welcome, and I will briefly introduce our co-hosts for tonight's session, Paco Falder, Andy Forbes, Joseph Kubon, and Philip Safir. Paco is the Director of Digital Customer Experience, Chief Technical Officer at Capgemini Spain. He is an expert in strategic and innovative Salesforce, digital transformations, and enhancing customer experiences. Andy is the Capgemini Americas Salesforce Chief Technical Officer at Capgemini. He is a leader specializing in Salesforce architecture and leveraging generative AI to streamline workflows and maximize efficiency. Joseph is the Global Vice President of Salesforce Platform Architecture at Astound Commerce. He is an expert specializing in business intelligence and maximizing Salesforce platform capabilities to drive transformative solutions. Philip is the Global Vice President of Salesforce Delivery at Astound Commerce. He is a leader in applied generative AI strategy, enterprise solutions, and innovative Salesforce development processes. It is so great to have you all co-hosting office hours with me. Welcome.
Thank you.
Would you like to take a moment to introduce yourselves further and share a little bit about your Salesforce story?
Andy, you want to go first? A is alphabetically.
Yeah, Joseph. Well, I'll do the quick intro. First touched a computer in 1977, which means I've cycled through programming mainframes with punch cards to mini computers to PCs to network PCs to big time network PCs to the cloud to everything from the writing code from scratch to frameworks to the kind of work we do today. Fell into Salesforce 22 years ago now. I wish I could tell you that I knew what was going to happen. I had a vice president of sales that wanted to know what his people around the world were doing, and I'd been reading about Salesforce, so I just lucked out and got to implement it then. I've been pretty much in the space ever since. Joseph?
For those of you who want to know more about punch cards, I put a Wikipedia link in the chat.
Does it have a picture of Andy Forbes of the Wikipedia page?
It does. It does. He's in the black and white photo about half the way down.
Well, Joseph, they didn't invent color photos or color in general, right, until like 1987.
Yeah, so. For real. Okay. All right. We're going to have fun. I can guarantee you that. So my name is Joseph Kubon. I am a three-time now MVP, Salesforce MVP, technical architect. I do lead platform architecture for Astound, but I consider myself a trailblazer and have been in the ecosystem about 13 years. I'm 40 times certified, and I've typically worked on large global implementations for people like Boeing and iHeartRadio and the like. So that's my area of expertise. Philip?
Hey, thanks. So glad to be with you all today. And by the way, alphabetical would be Paco, but I'll go next since you introduced me. So yeah. Philip Safir, I'm in Atlanta. So as was mentioned at the kickoff, so I'm a vice president at Astound Commerce. I'm responsible for our delivery excellence and operations within Astound Commerce. And I would say overall just strategic growth as we grow into more of the Salesforce 360. My background actually is I would say less Salesforce heavy than what you've heard so far from my colleagues here. So I've been in the consulting ecosystem for most of my career, the last 15, 20 years. And I would say in general, I've always tried to explore what the next great tool set is, what the next great innovation might be. Salesforce happens to lead the charge in the CRM space, continues to do so, and I'm excited to kind of blend the two together as we talk about generative AI and how it can apply to Salesforce and what we do in the ecosystem. So glad to be here with all of you today. Paco.
Thank you. Well, my name is Paco Falder. I am based in Madrid. I'm in Spanish. Well, I've been in the Salesforce ecosystem around 12 years, more or less, always playing roles or as a chief architect. I've been not only in Spain, also in Australia, in the UK for a while, always heading architecture teams and developer teams. And well, I've been always very passionate about creating efficiency for my customer, for the engagement that I work on. And well, it's Gen AI is always has been a point to me, a game changer that in terms of applying to my customer and my project to gain that efficiency and that value in a better way, right? And yes, and that's why I was really happy to be invited to participate in this book from Andy, Joseph, and Philip. And yes, and hopefully I can contribute to the session.
And let me jump in real quickly. Let me point out that Philip and Joseph worked for Capgemini when they wrote the book and when they learned everything they know about AI.
Exactly.
The gauntlet's been thrown down. All right, so where do you want to go from here, Geraldine? Do you want to talk about the catalyst of the book?
Yeah, so I'm going to do a brief explanation for anyone that might be new of kind of the office hours and what we kind of do during this, and then we can jump into a demo after that if you would like, Joseph. So for those joining for the first time, I always like to briefly explain the purpose of these office hours. These sessions are an informal get-together for gathering with military trailblazers and allies to explore non-technical Salesforce career and branding related topics to help you achieve your professional development and career related goals. The next hour is intended to be an opportunity for collaborative mentorship. Everyone on this call is encouraged to step up and help answer your questions from your perspective, which will provide additional diversity of experience to the answers given. So please keep an eye on the chat window. There's already been some come across during tonight's session. Dave Nava and Dave Albright will be adding some great links over in that section for you that include learning, networking, and employment opportunities. If you'd like to ask questions at any point during today's session, please feel free to do so. If you don't feel as comfortable speaking up, you can post your question in the chat. I'll do my best to monitor the chat window, and we'll also be looking for raised hands. So finally, tonight's session is being recorded. If you'd like to share an attribution-free comment, please let me know before speaking, and I'll make sure it's edited out of the final recording. So we are going to start tonight's session with a quick demo from our co-hosts before we jump into our questions for the evening. All right, Joseph, Andy tested earlier. He was able to share his screen. I don't know if it's easier for him to, or if you would like to, or who you would like to kick off the demo for this evening.
Thank you, Geraldine. So I'm going to maybe, we are going to move into the demo. I'll maybe take 3 to 5 minutes to kind of set the stage about the book and what you're going to learn, and how Andy will actually do the AI demo. It kind of gives a little bit of context around the book. We crafted the book in the fall or winter, October to December of 2023, around the idea that AI and Chat GPT would help all roles of Salesforce development, not just developers. that there was going to be impact along the way for the Salesforce admin, for the testers, for the product owners, for the BAs, for organizational change management, for documentation, for strategy. All of the roles are affected by AI and the advent of AI. I will say, like, when we wrote the book, we had Chat GPT at our fingertips. I'm happy that earlier this week, I now have a full-blown instance of Salesforce with all the co-pilot tools, model builder, and whatnot, and beginning to explore that. But what you're going to see is Chat GPT and how it can impact your development, but you can apply the same concepts that we're talking about in the book, that around the refinement of prompts. And Andy's demo will show you that, how a simple prompt yields one kind of result. And then as you set the context and move through the refinement of the prompt, you get a better result. And ultimately, what you yield, it's meant to be an assistant. It's not a replacement of your role, your job. It's meant to help accelerate it. It's meant to help get you there quicker. On the Salesforce-oriented tools, those are meant to do the same thing. They're meant to be an assistant if you're a salesperson working opportunities and engaging with a customer and needing to return an email. And so that's kind of the stage around how the book was conceived and the aspects we brought forward in it. Chapter 1 is pivotal because it talks about how to set up your environments. That's how we got consistent tone throughout the book, so that we carry that story forward. Philip and his chapters, or Paco and his chapters, all work through the same general concept of connecting Salesforce to Snowflake, and you see that. But you can take an individual chapter. Don't think, hey, if I'm just a tester, this book is too much. Explore the book because there's a chapter on testing. Explore the book because there's a chapter on Apex. Explore the book because there's a chapter on flows. That's the tee up. Andy, you want to show them Chat GPT, walk through the prompts, and we'll start from there. Any questions at this point, Carolyn? I'm trying to watch you, Andy, chat.
No, that was great.
Okay.
That was great. I'm
All
excited. Right. I saw your smile, Andy, about the demo, so he is well prepared.
Okay.
Okay, there we go. Give me a second here. I'm trying to do this on a computer without an external monitor, so it's taking me a second here. All righty. Would somebody confirm they can see my screen?
I can see it.
It is coming up now. Yep, got it.
Fantastic. So I'll say, first of all, y'all are going to have to watch me type, and that's painful. I have arthritis in my hand, so my typing's not the best. Good news is you can misspell things pretty steadily, and ChatGPT will still figure it out. So first ask I have is, give me an example of something you've done recently with Salesforce, preferably Apex or an integration, but totally up to you all. Just somebody blurt something out.
Actually, I've got one for you. One that I've actually been using GPT for. Sure. Nava's like, yes. I need to make a blob for an HTTP request. So we're going to put a picture into Slack using Apex. So we have to do a blob as the outbound for the HTTP request. So I need GPT to take the header and the boundary and create a blob that we can use as the main body. Does that make sense?
No, it does, but dude, you're going to challenge my knowledge of that specific topic a little bit.
Me too. I think GPT too, because let me tell you, GPT was not happy this morning.
Well, let's
I can give you something else though if you want.
No, let's now you've got me challenged. Let's see what we can do. So let's see. So basically you're writing a call out, is that right? Or writing a web service? Which way is the data going?
It's going outbound HTTP request to an endpoint for Slack. This is probably a little more advanced than everyone in here wants to actually hear about.
Sales. Tell you what, give me a second here. So before I do that, so first thing for you all to be aware of is you'll see over on the left there, I'm working on a book about using AI to play a better game of golf, which is why you see some of that stuff in the upper left-hand corner. What we do a lot of now is rather than going straight to trying to get Chat GPT to do what we want, we start by creating GPTs. I don't know if any of you all have played with that, but GPTs are best thought of as a lens, as a way to focus the power of a large language model on a specific, somewhat narrow thing that you want to accomplish. So one of the things I've been playing around with is writing GPTs to write user stories. Can I write one that writes every kind of user story there is? Or should I write them so it's a user story for Salesforce integrations, a user story for Salesforce Lightning Web Components, that kind of. So this is kind of the generic one I've been working on here, the Acme. And I said Acme because if you use a trademarked name in the name of the GPT you create, within a day, OpenAI will shut it down. They'll lock it and tell you can't do that. So if you decide to play with GPTs, do not name your GPT Salesforce User Story Guide, because within a day, our friends from OpenAI will shut it down. That's why you see Acme. So I'm using the Acme User Story Guide. Let me go ahead and say, please write user story. I probably won't get your problem exactly right, but to send a BLOB to an external system. Let's see what it comes up with. Well, it knew what a BLOB was. That's useful. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. So it's going to go ahead and write a user story for us. And because this is the GPT that I wrote, it uses a very specific format, the format I asked it to use for the user story. Taking a look at what it's producing, this all looks reasonable. Okay. Not sure that's exactly what I would have written. I'll give you an example. Great user story. I'm always polite, as I think I said in the book somewhere. I want our AI overlords to be happy with me. So I always say please, and I'm always complimentary, just in case one day the Skynet takes over and remembers the people that were nice to it. So great user story. Please rewrite it and add some design notes. So it's going to go ahead and rewrite the user story again. And this is what Joseph was talking about. This is not Stack Overflow. This is not GitHub. This isn't you get what you get and that's what you get. You need to treat this tool like a knowledgeable person that wants to help you. If it didn't quite get it right the first time, go ahead and ask again. It's a good idea a lot of times if you're not real familiar with what you asked it to do, to ask it if it thinks it's right, to ask it to confirm that it's correct. You'd be surprised how often it'll actually go, now that you asked me to think about it, I'm going to change my answer a little bit. So you really need to treat it like a talented developer that's trying to help you. Right? So now it went ahead, I asked it for some design notes. It went ahead and here's some design notes. It gave me some thoughts on how to tackle. They all look pretty reasonable. Let's go ahead. Just let's roll the dice. Please go ahead and write the call out for me. Include lots of comments. Let's see what it'll do. Now that I've framed it, I didn't go straight to asking it to write the apex for me. I started by asking it to write a user story. I tweaked the user story a little bit. I could have also asked it what all the questions were that I should ask the product owner or the client about what's needed in order to then get answers and refine the story even more. So you still have to follow your typical development process. You're not just going to be able to go, write this and click and deploy it. You still need to follow a process of decomposing what you need, of getting it defined, of getting it into a user story structure, refining that user story till you're happy with it, and only then asking it to write the code. As I think we learned in writing the book, and Paco did a lot of the hardcore Apex chapters, right? You do kind of need to know what it's producing. If you can't write Apex yourself, I would be very cautious about believing what Chat GPT produces for you, right? It does, you do, it's a helper. It's not going to replace us anytime soon. It's basically a helper and accelerator. So one last thing we'll try here. Please. Right. Just because it came up, right? A manual test script. So I'm going to ask it to go ahead and write a test script for me about how I would go about testing this. So it's going to go ahead and write a manual test script for me. And like actual test scripts, it's going to make some assumptions about just how much detail it needs to provide in the steps, right? It kind of assumes that you know how to do these things, that you're an experienced tester, right? And so it's gonna give me a couple of different test cases, and here's what's interesting. So step number 4, if we take a well, actually, hold on, it's going to keep on going. So test case number 3, step number 4. It told me to do something, and I'm not quite sure how to do that. Right? I'm like, that sounds great, but how do I do that? So I can actually ask it. I can drill down into my test. So for test case number 3, step number 4, which, as you may recall, as it scrolled by quickly, was one sentence. It was just a handful of words. So I'm going to say for test case number 3, step number 4, please provide more detail on how to do this. So what this is going to do is, it's not Stack Overflow. It's not static. I can actually incorporate the use of this tool into my testing process for my testers, so that if they're asked to perform a step where they don't know how to do it, they can say, hey, that step, help me with that, because I wasn't quite sure how to do that. And now it's giving me a full page of tips on how to execute that specific step. I can actually then again drill down. If one of these steps isn't clear to me, I don't know how to do it, I can then ask for another level of detail and drill down and get exactly what I need in order to be able to do this testing. So I think the real power here is it's not Stack Overflow, it's not GitHub. You need to treat it like somebody who wants to help you, like a really knowledgeable person who really wants to help you, but needs to be asked the right questions. They won't, at least to this point, this isn't an agent. It won't ask you what you're trying to accomplish. It won't prompt you in what it needs to be asked. You need to continue to ask and try to get answers different ways. And occasionally, it's worth saying, are you sure you're right? Because generally it is, but sometimes it won't be. So it's definitely there's some OCM, there's definitely some organizational change management, behavioral changes that you need to make. And with that, I will pause and hand it back.
Awesome. Thank you, Andy. I think that goes perfectly into kind of our first set of questions, is really, how can we utilize AI for Salesforce development? One of the areas that I think was really interesting that you brought up is how someone could leverage Chat GPT, or particularly, and I think one area of interest is that level of detail that you got with the GPT that you were showing versus, a general Chat GPT. Would you say that a lot of it is based on the fact that you wrote that specific GPT, or some of it is more or less available to people if they're just using Chat GPT to really be able to skill up or stretch themselves if they don't understand how to do something technically? How much of that is specific to what you built versus what is generally available?
That's a great question. And what you saw there was a lot of that was very specific to the GPT, not just the GPT, but the fact that that account I used to do that is the one I used to write the book. It's the one I've had for a year and a quarter now. I mean, basically the moment they made it available, that's the one I signed up for. So it does have some history. It certainly has some of the context of the things I've done recently. I was actually surprised it didn't try to sneak a golf reference in because I've been doing so much work with golf. At the same time, though, GPTs are not all that hard to write. I mean, the Chat GPT will help you write the GPTs. It's not a separate skill set. You can literally go, well, and if we have time at the end, I'll show you, but you can literally just say, help me write a GPT, and it'll write a GPT, and you can add a file to the GPT to further educate it. It'll help you write the file. So the first thing you do is get it to help you write what you want your user stories to look like. You put that into a Word document, you save it to your hard drive, and then you tell it you want to write a GPT, and it'll walk you through how to do the GPT, and then you upload that file it created for you, and now you've got your very own GPT for writing fantastic user stories, or test scripts, or Apex, or fill in the blank. And here's the thing, guys. Don't ever tell the people you work for that it's an AI doing all this for you. Take the credit. We all get blamed for stuff that didn't work out, that wasn't our fault. So when you find a tool like this, it's all you, man.
Oh, I love that. Christopher, you had a question.
Just a short one. This is probably a little more esoteric than we want to get, but have you tried using the compressed code version? It looks like old-fashioned like encrypted code when you create it. It's sort of what the GPT translates all of those little blocks into in the background when you put it in, and then you can use that to even further, like if you have a really big instruction set and you want to put it all inside of a smaller container, you can have it convert to what it does on the back. It makes it that much harder to change the GPT or the instruction set because you have to go through the multiple steps. But I was just wondering if you guys played with that at all.
I have a little bit, but, and again, I don't want to rabbit hole at this conversation. The thing is, well, two things. The first is, the best way to think about this is it's the late 1800s. People are inventing cars, right? There's the building the cars and there's driving the cars, and it's two very different skill sets. And my take is that for most of us on this call, we're really about driving them, less about getting into the guts of how they work. It's fascinating, but I don't have a PhD and 20 years of experience, so I'm going to leave it to those guys who are all getting $1 million a year, and don't even get me started on what AI talent makes you these days. So I would say I'm more about using it. The other thing is that, oh my God, everybody and their brother is piling on. I mean, Salesforce has a wonderful set of tools. Microsoft has a wonderful set of tools. Google has a wonderful set of tools. The OpenAI people do, Anthropic, Cohere. I'm actually being a little careful about getting to be an expert in any one of the tool sets, right? AI tool sets right now, until it's more obvious who wins. There's some people on this call that are clearly old enough to remember Ask Jeeves. Remember Ask Jeeves? 1995, 1996, it was the shiznit. It was the search engine of choice. And then Google came along, and within a year, Ask Jeeves was yesterday's news. I just want to point out right now what I just showed you. You know, something in a year or two, you might be like, oh yeah, I remember that old AI I used to play with, right? Figure out, learn to drive the car, and then it really doesn't matter what car you drive, would be my advice.
If you think, well, Amanda, you have a question. Let's maybe go that route first.
Yes, thank you. So as you were demoing that, Andy, I jumped onto GPT and I was looking for yours. Obviously, I couldn't find it. So my question is you keep it closed, you keep it private. Obviously, you don't want people to have access to it to teach it things you don't want to teach. Am I understanding that correctly?
No, it's a little bit different than that.
Okay.
Like Paco, Joseph, and Philip, We all work for companies that are trying to understand where this is all going. And I'm not pushing anything like that out publicly that can be attributed to me or my employer without approval from my employer for doing it, basically, right? Not only that, but the moment you push something out, people want support, people want it changed, people want to know how it works. And as much as I love being helpful, I'm buried, like all of us, I'm sure I'm buried in work these days, so I'm not pushing for that sort of publicity. Now, for second edition of the book, who knows what we'll do. The sad thing is, when we started writing the book, none of this was available. I mean, this is how quick it's moving. Before we got the book done, GPTs came along. And then suddenly within weeks of the book being released, we all looked at each other and said, oh man, now we got to write a second edition.
Only going to happen again when we finally get down to doing that, though.
Yeah. And that's, Philip's exactly right. I mean, great. So we write some GPTs, we release them publicly, and the week we release them, OpenAI will announce agents. And then we'll have to write the third edition.
There you go.
It'll
Thank you for clarifying. I appreciate it.
Perpetual task. We're probably married to each other forever. In a good way, Philip. I see the smile. Joined at the hip. So, like, Amanda, and picking up a little bit around your question and where I was going to add in on what Andy was saying before that, like, there are key aspects. Chapter 1 talks about this. I wrote a blog post around whether or not is your AI wrong. And it's one of those discussion points I've had multiple times with different people at different meetings or whatnot. There's a difference between GPT 3.5 and 4.0. If you pay for it, is your information public or private, right? What have you talked about inside of the book? One of the things that it's there, so I'm not giving away the secret sauce. But inside the book, we talk about the way that it will continue to learn, the custom instructions, how you teach it to respond to you. Vandy wants to show his screen again. He could, but inside of setting up OpenAI, you're setting the context of you're an experienced developer or you're an inexperienced developer. Are you a 5-year-old or are you 65, Andy? 65-year-old? So it takes what it knows about you in that conversation and puts it in a language or an output that you can understand. So if you tell the GPT or tell OpenAI you're very technical or you need to be walked through, you'll get different results. So when we wrote the book, we didn't have an ability to actually produce the XML around a flow, but the flow chapters are built around what are the instructions for building a flow and that sort of stuff. So you can ask for, give me the steps to execute this task, even if you need to learn how to do that task. You don't have to expect like it's going to throw out the blob code that Andy did and what the heck do I do with it next, right? So does that help with what your GPT would know or not know? Does that help provide some context there?
Yeah, it does. I got sidetracked a little bit with what he was saying, but yes, I have experienced that myself with how you talk to it, how you tell it. It will give you all sorts of different outputs.
Yeah, my wife is a middle school science teacher, and she can tell when the student turns in a paper written by Chat GPT because there are words that 11-year-olds don't know.
Yep. Well, and I just want to interject here quickly. The reality is that until last summer, it would actually generate the XML for post.
Oh, really?
But sometime last summer, it stopped working. Say the people from OpenAI actually updated it so it would not produce the XML for flows. But there was a point where you could actually ask it to generate all the XML and then paste them into the metadata with something like VS Code, and it would, just like you saw the Apex. So this is constantly evolving, sometimes in a direction we like. I can only assume that somebody from Salesforce in the Bay Area talked to somebody from OpenAI in the Bay Area and said, that's going to be a problem because it's so complex. Can you not do that? Who knows? But yeah, it was interesting to note that it did it for a while and then one day stopped doing it.
Did somebody go up? Oh, go ahead, Geraldine.
No, go ahead, Joseph.
I was just seeing like I thought I saw the pop up, someone else's hand went up, but I don't know where the queue is.
I don't see anyone else. Dave's, did you catch anyone else?
I did not.
Okay.
No other hands.
No other hands.
Okay.
Perfect. All right. So we're about the halfway point, which is where over the halfway point, I guess. We take our group photo. Before I forget, because I tend to forget these things, part of this is making sure that we're always branding. So we will be sharing this on social media. It'll be posted on LinkedIn and Twitter tomorrow, and we will tag everyone in the photo. So if you only have your first name that is showing and you would like to include your full name, go ahead and put that in the chat now, so we can make sure to get you tagged. And then everyone who does want to participate in the photo, please go ahead and unmute your video. I'll grab a screenshot. I'll give everyone just a few seconds to be able to put their names in. And then if you try not to do any chats right when I start my countdown, because otherwise it will block some people's beautiful faces. Okay, we got a few more coming in.
You can block mine.
Oh. I know, and the Daves will take a backup picture because I am notorious for just looking the other way and they turn out all sorts of crazy. So you will have about 3 opportunities to have a good picture. So that is a good thing. We'll pick the best out of 3. Okay, it looks like
my mouth will still be open.
The chat posts have slowed down, so we'll go ahead and give everyone a countdown. So 3, 2, 1. Okay, I think we successfully got it. I'm just checking. Yeah, everybody, Dave Albright, it is what it is. Okay, so one thing I think that has really stuck out to me is how you talked about, okay, there's this, you don't know how to test this particular area, or you have somebody who's maybe more junior. So I'd love to hear each of your takes on how can people who are maybe new to the Salesforce ecosystem really use AI, and maybe specifically Chat GPT, to upskill and really be able to make an impact in the system, in the ecosystem, without a ton of experience.
I'm happy to start there if you guys don't mind. So, it's interesting. I was actually having a conversation similar to that topic earlier today. So, generative AI, Chat GPT specifically, let's say, right? Like it's a good tool to harmonize skills. And what I mean by that is, like, if you treat it like a expert in the room, a sidekick, so to say, right? You can actually gather information that otherwise you might have to go to a human expert. Doesn't mean it's replacing your human expert. It just gives you another place to go. So if you are, as you asked, right, a beginner or someone that's trying to learn a new concept, or completely new even to the Salesforce ecosystem, if you approach it as a guide, then it can help accelerate your journey to learn, right? It can help give you a path forward where your human mentor may not be available to provide some insight. You may not have the time to go explore trailheads, whatever it might be, right? Like it can give you, point you in the right direction, give you that leg up to get you a step further. Caution is, as I think Andy pointed out in the demo too, it's like you can't assume what it tells you is accurate. So it's another guide to help you along your journey. It's another expert to give you, point you in the right direction. But it's not a substitute, for the true expert in your team or in your organization that you can really go to validate.
And just to add on that, because when we ask, I think that when people ask that question, we have kind of in our mind the first time when a junior developer use Chat GPT. But I think that we have also to think that in 2 months after they start using Chat GPT in the long term, there are so many benefits, right? So, for example, I have some people in my team that junior developers that we are asking them to start using ChatGPT for every single development. We have put some mechanisms to review the output that they are getting and how they are using this in real project, in POCs, and in other part of the delivery with a technical leader or with a knowledgeable person. And after a couple of weeks, I mean, they kind of start using that like in many different ways that at the beginning, and really you can see how this is accelerating the work that they need to do, not only by generating code but also asking why a particular error is in that line of code, why. Understanding what is the framework that needs to be implemented for handling error, for creating a JSON from a records from a set of records. So there are so many benefits on using this tool in the long term that I think that we tend to think on just the first days and how if the adoption is going to be good or not, but in the long term, the benefit is enormous.
So I'll pick up from there and bring about a reminder of how AI or how the ChatGPT works, right? Even for us, even for myself, I'll at least take ownership of this. There are things that I'll pivot to ChatGPT to ask to clarify. There will be a piece of this conversation about trust and bias, right? And is the ChatGPT biased? What do you know? In real life, 12 years ago when I got started on Salesforce, my first mentor, who's a program architect was at Salesforce for a while, told me future calls are terrible to use. And I've carried it with me like a mantra for 12 years. And last year I had to write something that used an future call. And I was like distraught, like that the developer had come with this idea that he had to use an future call. I got my mentor. I started texting my mentor, like, certainly we're headed down the wrong path. I don't want to use an I don't think this is right. And he's like, dude, ask ChatGPT what to do. And ChatGPT wrote it with an future call. And I'm just like, well, I don't like that doesn't make it. So you have to set aside like the idea that you know everything. You don't. And if you look at the key difference between OpenAI or ChatGPT or Copilot, pick your tool. You're having a conversation. All of us Google. All of us for years have been Googling archives of information and getting a result, reading someone's post from a single point in time. I'll have people say to me, look, hey, I know how to go do that. The blog post you're showing me is from 2007. The platform's evolved. It's changed. It's different. Can you find a blog post about this subject from maybe the last 6 months, and see what the current and latest is? So that conversation, you can have that conversation with the GPT and get the refinement, get clarity, the way you would want Google to have a conversation with you. Just because the top hit of the top search result is the Salesforce Ben article or Developer Force article from 2014 doesn't mean that that's how you should write your SSO functionality, right? So you have that conversation, and what do you get back and forth? And it begins to refine the direction. Whether you're a new person on the ecosystem, Geraldine, or you're a 14-year veteran, it's applicable for a coaching perspective, the way you learn how to do better golf. I hope it improves Andy's game.
I love that. I think it was funny. It's like your sidekick, right? That very honest sidekick that will tell you if you're thinking things maybe in a different way than you should be. So I love that. Andy, I want to give you the opportunity to answer this as well, if you'd like.
Yeah, and I'll be quick. Hopefully, we'll see. So 1994, I was sitting in a lab funded by a regional Bell operating company, a name I'm sure that everybody on this call would recognize. And I was looking at video on demand for them. And the guy sitting next to me was looking at this internet thing. And he and I would sit and we would talk about where this internet thing was going to go. And I'll always remember looking at a newspaper site that looked like the front page of a newspaper. They recreated their physical piece of paper on a website, and looking at a company that was trying to get into doing grocery stores, and they literally recreated aisles, like it was a white space in the middle, and then there were aisles on each side with stuff that you were supposed to pick out and put in your cart. And the reason I bring this up is that right now we're all trying to fit how we use this tool into the paradigms we're used to. We're trying to think of it as documentation, as the person sitting next to us, as Stack Overflow, as GitHub. And at the end of the day, 5 years from now, that is not going to be how we use these tools. I don't know how we're going to use them. If I knew that, I'd go start another company. But as it is, I do know it's not going to be as a simple point solution for how we work today. So to answer your question, for the people that are getting started, look, I do 1 or 2 approvals a project. I don't remember how those things work. The moment I'm in a project where someone says I need an approval, I'm just going to either look it up or now go to Chat GPT and tell me how to set up an approval to do this, right? Debug logs. There's probably nobody on this call that can just look at a debug log and read it. Now you don't have to. Just cut out the part of it you care about, drop it in and say, what is this trying to tell me? And it'll actually answer the question for you. It'll tell you what's going on in that debug log. So what I would say is you still have to go through the trailheads. You still have to go through the partner learning camp. You still have to get the certifications. You still have to learn the tool. But every time something is that much past what you happen to know, that's where the power comes in. It takes an hour of research down to 5 minutes of research. It doesn't replace it. If you don't know how to write Apex, you really don't want to just turn to the tool and have it crank out 500 lines, because you will regret that sooner or later, right? But if you do know how to write Apex, but you're not quite how to, because Philip, nobody uses @future anymore. It's NQJob, my friend. If you don't know how to use NQJob, then being able to pivot and go, what's the best way for me to set up my use of asynchronous Apex by using NQJob? It'll break it down for you immediately instead of having to go do the research. So what I would say is use it for things that you've heard of, but you don't quite know how they work. That's how it accelerates you getting started in this space.
I love that. Great advice. And I'm going to go back to a point that Joseph kind of touched on lightly, and that's bias, right? I think there's been a lot of conversation around how does AI actually give us answers? Is there bias that's involved? So can you all give from your experience any specific measures or best practices that we should look at implementing to address potential bias or ethical considerations when leveraging AI technology?
Yeah, so thanks for circling back to that, Geraldine. It's, as this is going to be a recurring theme, right? I saw a demo, #SafeHarbor, by a Salesforce person at a local San Antonio Trailblazer community meeting we did here. And some of it is context. Some of it, back behind the learning inside of GPT is what might be predominant of the data around that information, right? If you ask ChatGPT to produce a picture for you or a profile of you of, show me a middle school or show me an elementary school teacher, I bet it come back with a picture of a woman, right? Because most of us have experience, or most of us think of teachers as women, especially in elementary schools, right? Are there men who teach elementary school? Absolutely, but that's what it knows, right? It does take a person to then take the output of the GPT to then process that information, refine it, and be that watchdog of the bias before propagating it further, right? And that's why, like, you can't just, trust the output. You have to interact with the output. It's not meant to be a replacement or do it all for yourself. Take it, copy it, paste it, move forward, wipe your hands, and you're done. The ethical aspect of AI is like any tool, any invention, around can be used for evil in the wrong hands, right? Henry T. Ford built a car. He didn't expect people to drive it at high speeds, get behind the wheel drunk, and plow through a crowd of people. But that's the operator of the vehicle making decisions, right? So I inevitably believe that. And I saw the buzzword at human at the helm. Human at the helm, hashtag TDX24, is what we're wanting to craft around the message, right? There's a human interacting and responsible for eliminating or navigating that bias that comes out of one's code or the GPT. Yeah. Does that help?
It does. I just want to give anyone else opportunity if they wanted to comment on that before we get to our closing question.
Well said.
Thank you.
Okay, well, we are about 5 minutes and we have 4 people, so I'm going to get to our closing question so you all have the opportunity to answer. So as trailblazers in the tech industry, what excites you most about the possibilities that AI presents for individuals transitioning into Salesforce roles? How can they seize these opportunities to thrive in their careers?
Andy, you want to go first?
I was busy staring at Philip's picture.
Philip, do you want to go first? You got 1 minute.
I'll just make a statement that says, be curious. Like, this is new to everybody. Like, even people that are experts in the field, I think it was even OpenAI that's come out and said they don't fully understand how their GPTs work. So be curious, explore, and I think together we're going to figure out what some of the cool things we can do that we haven't even thought of yet.
Okay.
I would echo that, right? The be curious, but you have to embrace the fact that things are going to change. You will be paralyzed by fear, right? Avoid that. Like, it's going to impact you. It's going to change the way you would do work. Get involved. Be open-minded at the outcome. Look to engage in the community. You had asked questions about, some of the next steps. There's ways to engage. This won't have some piece of this marketing. There's ways to engage with us, the 4 of us on LinkedIn, through the newsletter, through the Chat GPT group, the Trailblazer community. I don't know how many times I spend time with the people who are hired in and mentees that I have, where I point them back to go ask a question in the Trailblazer community, engage, create a communication, create a channel for communication. Don't be shy. You have to leverage the power of why the group is here today. These resources, there's lots of people who want to help you. David Giller, just countless people you can rattle off, all want to bring you into the conversation and help you.
We'll go also for embrace it, but actually I will add also that you have to get ready to put together the right mechanisms to make sure that you govern properly the change, right? The other day I was reading some posts that were saying that the quality of the code that has been generated over the last month with Gen AI is very poor if you compare with the one before the Gen AI, let's say, time, right? And that's why, because I think that we are still in a adoption phase of this technology, and I don't think that we are still governing properly the new tool, but certainly it comes with a lot of benefits. But we have to be ready also to make sure that people use it to grow as professionals, to get knowledge and just not to get things done, because getting things done at the end comes with the trade-off of quality and other things. So embrace it, but get ready to put together the right mechanisms to govern it properly.
Andy, you get to close it out.
Same thing the guy said. The world's changing. It's going to change more quickly than we expect, if you believe Ray Kurzweil. Just be curious. Don't assume you know what these tools can do. Every time you need to do something, give it a try. See if you can figure out how to make it do something cool and new and interesting.
I love that. I love the be curious, try it out, don't be afraid, all of these themes we've heard tonight. So before we close, I'd love to say thank you, Paco, Andy, Joseph, Philip. Thank you so much for co-hosting tonight's session. It has been awesome having you here and getting your perspective on the topics we discussed. So thank you. Just so great. So many cumulative years of knowledge and wonderful.
I was 7 when Andy started with punch cards.
That is
44 years ago, right? I do my math right? 53 minus 7. 40, yeah, 46 years. 46 years ago.
Yes.
46 years ago, which is, was Philip alive in 77?
I think he
Show of hands. Paco was also.
I was -7.
Oh, -7. You were -7. There you go.
Goodness.
I love
So
you,
good.
Andy.
So good.
Swifty heart.
I love that.
And I want to say, guys, I appreciate what you all have done to end the group. And I wanted to make the observation that my father is buried at the Naval Academy, my father-in-law at Arlington, and my son's an active duty Marine. So anything I can do to help any of you all, I'm easy enough to find. Just let me know.
Thank you so much, Andy. So appreciated. And once again, thank you all so much for taking time, and Paco for staying up late. So appreciated. With that, thank you all so much for attending. I hope to see you all next session, and have a great rest of your Wednesday night.
Thanks all. See you in a couple weeks.